mentioning in the last segment of the program the papal visit, and it seems that America's left believes that this guy is one of their own. But I mentioned this yesterday, when he talks about climate change, he's talking about it because he said he's worried about some of the lives who may be impacted, and he says all human life is valuable, which is a common refrain among Roman Catholics, and that is because they believe that life, for instance, begins at conception. Even Joe Biden said that during an interview yesterday, although then he said it's not my job in life to impose those views on others. Well, wait a minute. If you believe it starts at conception, Joe, the Vice President of the United States and perhaps successor as president, when you say that, then that would mean that taking any life following conception is homicide. But you're okay with homicide if somebody else believes it's okay. It's what he's telling us, right? Did he see the contradiction? Well, he's Joe Biden. That says enough. 9:34. Bill Colley with you on Top Story. It's 64. And, of course, you're listening to News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com, and you're on the air.
Good morning, Bill. I really like your idea of going out on the road. I think you'd get to meet more faces that actually talk to you, and I wonder how many people on the left would actually show up and say something to you where, they call up, scream out, and then hang up. But, you could do it in many places, whatever the topic of the week is, or anything else. Maybe have a radio show outside of the refugee place or on the campus of Southern Idaho or a lot of different places. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And as I say, the more people can offer me suggestions, we can start mapping this all out. And we could be on the road quite a bit once it actually happens.
Well, Bill, I look forward to it. I think you have a great idea there, and I think we'll see who the brave people are that are willing to put their face behind their words.
Hey, thank you very, very much for your time too, as well. Also gives me an opportunity to check out all the good restaurants in all of these towns. There's a great Italian restaurant in Buell. I have not yet eaten there, but one of my coworkers has filled me in. But I was in Buell one day, but I had an appointment and I couldn't stop. So see, every time I go by one of these places, but if I did the show there, we could actually, following the show, we could sneak across town and actually get a bite to eat. 9:36, Bill Colley with you on Top Story. Ted Cruz appearing on the Kelly File on Fox News Channel, talking about the visit of Pope Francis. Now, Cruz is a Southern Baptist, but he started out life as a Roman Catholic. His parents both Roman Catholics. Actually, his mom was a Roman Catholic from northern Delaware, where the vice president calls home, even though Joe Biden is not a native of there. So he came up as about age 3 when his dad converted to the Southern Baptist faith. Cruz has been Southern Baptist ever since then, but at least he has some grounding in Roman Catholicism. Take a listen to what he has to say about how liberals try to imprint their own beliefs on Pope Francis.
Pope Francis has been an incredible voice for life. He's been an incredible voice for marriage. He's been an incredible voice for religious liberty. And in all three of them, we are seeing an assault that is unprecedented in the history of our country. The Democrats and the media don't want to talk about the fact that today Senate Democrats stood virtually united in support of late-term abortion. They don't want to talk about these horrifying Planned Parenthood videos that show them selling the body parts of unborn children. They don't want to talk about the assault on marriage that Pope Francis has stood up against, and they certainly don't address the continued assault on religious liberty. In Egypt, when we saw 22 Coptic Christians beheaded by ISIS, and the Obama White House described it as they're being killed because of their Egyptian citizenship. Pope Francis powerfully spoke out. He said their blood confesses Jesus Christ. I'm very glad to welcome Pope Francis to America. I'm very glad he's with us.
Can I point this out too? When I heard his remarks this morning at the White House, when he spoke about religious liberty, my guess is you will find that mainstream media will focus exclusively on his words about climate change and will have very little to say about religious liberty. They'll claim, and I'll tell you what, he spoke far longer about religious liberty this morning than he did climate change. Maybe not much longer, but longer about, and his references to how his churches are being treated, especially after the Obamacare mandate that has come down in this country. I saw something this morning at a magazine called Crisis, and it's about how we've eradicated religion so much from our culture that the writer says we have a new established religion, and that is government. And he said we've tried so hard to say that new religions and other religions that were somewhat foreign to us are all equal with our own religions, so we disparage our original religions in this country. The writer, a fascinating piece, his name is Monsignor Hans Feichtinger. And he goes on to say this: de facto, he writes, we are moving towards establishing a new religion of state, even if that religion sees itself as not religion in the classical sense. And I came across that. So that's President Obama's religious faith. That's the religious faith of John Kerry, Joe Biden, and Nancy Pelosi. It's the religion of Harry Reid, who claims he's pro-life. Sometimes I wonder if Harry Reid converted to the Mormon faith because he thought it would be necessary to get himself elected. And then he savaged a Mormon candidate for president and then gloated about it. Can you really trust these people? 20 minutes away from 10 o'clock. Bill Colley with you on Top Story 65. On our way somewhere close to 90 before the day is over. Quick note, tomorrow morning we plan to be joined by the governor of Idaho. His name is C.L. Butchotter. Well, just in case you didn't know. And he'll be with us in the second hour of the program. He is also hosting, I believe at his ranch, we learned this yesterday, he's hosting a fundraiser, and the lieutenant governor of Ohio is going to be the featured guest. Now, her boss is the governor of Ohio, who's named John Kasich, who is running for president, and who also served with Governor Otter in the U.S. House of Representatives, where they were fairly close friends. We don't know if that's an endorsement for Governor Kasich, but I think it leans that way. Maybe we'll find out tomorrow morning. 9:43, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310. KLIX and newsradio1310.com, 65. I've got a quick note here because I think Governor Otter probably enjoys hunting and fishing. I think that if you live in Idaho, you've got to. Speaking of that, hunting seasons are going to keep people busy for a while around this area. Good for the economy. And also, you could help out somebody in the local economy too as well, especially if you need someone to do some processing for you after you bring the game in. High Desert Meat Processing processes one animal at a time. What you bring in is what you're going to get back. Darren Van Horn of High Desert Meat Processing in Twin Falls, Idaho, has over 30 years of experience in the meat business. You can visit High Desert Meat Processing on Facebook and read reviews of other customers. Give High Desert Meat Processing a call for all of your wild game and domestic processing needs. The telephone number is 734-9949. High Desert Meat does in-house smoking. Nothing gets shipped out. Specialty meats such as hot dogs, right? You know that one. But how about some of these will really tickle your tongue. You can get jerky, pepperoni, salami, summer sausage, kielbasa, breakfast sausage, brats, and Polish dogs. USDA approved. Darren works closely with local growers as well, beef growers, and their programs to ensure quality meat. 734-9949. We have a caller joining us this morning, 736-0300, the number to reach us. 9:45, and you're on the air.
Yeah, good morning, Bill. I just wonder if you'd heard anything about people being paid to bring these refugees in. Is there some kind of a government program? Because I've heard the CSI Extension office up here in Haley has moved thousands and thousands of refugees and immigrants into the state.
And a lot of the organizations that are actually getting checks for doing this are affiliated with churches. The Lutheran Church being one of the biggest.
Wow.
I should maybe clarify that. Since the Lutheran Church has split off into about 3 different denominations, the more liberal one is getting a check for doing this.
Amazing.
Yeah, a lot of money pouring through, and you know what? If Lutherans and Episcopalians have been hemorrhaging, membership, all of your mainline churches for years because of their liberalism, and so you don't have people putting money in the plate anymore. But if you want to keep the buildings open and you want to keep the priest fed, you go sign up for this program.
Wow. Thanks, Bill.
Hey, thank you much for the telephone call. People in this country do want questions answered because they don't want. There's a certain tipping point in culture, and they're seeing it in Europe right now, where you get so many people at once that all of a sudden that replaces your own culture. I think that's what Ben Carson was getting at the other day when he was speaking on NBC's Meet the Press. When he said he would not vote for a Muslim as president, he didn't say that he thinks we should stop one from being president. You see, that's the distinction here. Media doesn't tell you that. But he had to face media yesterday in Ohio, and I thought he conducted himself well.
I said I would support anyone. If again, it seems to be hard for people to actually hear English and understand it. I said I would support anyone, regardless of their background, if in fact they embrace American values and our Constitution and are willing to place that above their beliefs.
So Dr. Carson, doesn't that play into an underlying suspicion that Muslim Americans are prone to radicalism? Why should they have to outright denounce the tenets of Sharia law, for example, when a Christian is not as
Because Sharia law is completely antithetical to Americanism.
Yeah, but Dr. Carson, aren't you just being mean? I mean, and if you're mean, how can you be president? Because people want the president to sit around and say, "Hey, how you doing? Let me have you sit on my lap." Well, Bill Clinton would. Well, okay, just some people. I was telling my wife the other day, I let a little bit too much slip. She came over and she slapped me one. But I enjoyed that too. More with Ben Carson as he's facing media telling him that he's just a bad old meanie.
Dr. Carson, this is something that's now defining your campaign. People are seeing you as being anti-Muslim with your statements. How do you fix that? How do you come back from this perception?
The only way we fix that is fix the PC culture in our country, which only can listen to one narrative. And if it doesn't fit their philosophy, then they have to try to ascribe some motive to it to make it fit.
What really frightens them is Carson's actually seen a spike in support. And what frightens them is that here's a black man who might get elected president who will not continue their narrative of oppression. You see, they don't want a black man in office, whether it be Ben Carson or Dr. Allen or Colonel Allen West, probably working on a doctorate for all we know, or even an Alan Keyes, who was used to be a regular guest on one of my radio shows years ago. They don't want these people in office so they have to try and destroy them. And this is their opportunity to try and destroy Dr. Carson. Yeah, but he's just being mean and he wants to bar Muslims from serving as president. No, he did not say that. He said he would not vote for one. I won't vote for a Democrat. Does that make me mean? Am I saying that we should bar Democrats from office? Of course not. But you see what media is what they're up to here. They're twisting the words. And they figure if they just keep repeating the twisting of the words, that will become fact to you. That's what the goal of mainstream media is in this country. Lord forbid they ever report facts. 66. Coming up, Mike Gallagher, brought to you exclusively by the financial advisors at Waddell & Reed in Twin Falls. The telephone number 736-6563. You know, one topic we did not get to today during the course of the show, sage grouse. I had that on my list, so maybe just a quick mention of that. I was driving home yesterday, and I was listening to our Northwest Farm Report, and the news had just broken that Sally Jewell, who's the Interior Secretary, said that the sage grouse would not be on the endangered species list, which would greatly, if you're an outdoorsman and even farming, anything that goes on in places like Idaho, Wyoming, Montana, and parts of Oregon, Washington, Nevada, this could have severely, hamstrung any of those activities. There used to be, I think, according to the estimate, 16 million that lived out in the area of the plains and the desert and the mountains. Well, really, wherever there was sage. 16 million, and now there's supposedly only 500,000. The question is, whenever I see a figure like that, who was around to count 16 million of them 300 years ago? Well, yeah, but Bill, well, if you weren't there, I mean, are you going and looking for petrified skeletons? Well, Bill, so the reason this is done is apparently state management on the local level has been very, very good. There's a point I've got to make quickly about Pope Francis' visit. There is a Catholic doctrine of, I guess that would be church doctrine, but something called subsidiarity. And that says decisions should be made by local people at the local level and not by faraway bureaucrats. People should solve their own problems at the local level. Well, luckily, we're going to be allowed to do that. But what always got me about this story was Sally Jewell had said about a week ago, if there was going to be a government shutdown, that they may have to reconsider this. How in blazes are the two even related? In other words, little subtle threats for our congressional delegation here in Idaho, and maybe people like John Barrasso, who's a senator from Wyoming and very conservative, maybe little subtle threats for them, saying that, if you don't go along with us, we're going to come in and ruin your state's economies. If you go for the shutdown, remember the sage grouse will suddenly be endangered. Well, how are they related? Because you oppose President Obama, they are related. This is how government works any longer in this country. Don Hall made a comment about that earlier, and he was here in the beginning of this hour, that people are so dadgum angry at Washington right now. And you're seeing Newt Gingrich commented about that last night. He said 75% of the public, thinks government is corrupt. Why do you expect? Why would anybody in politics be surprised by public anger? Speaking of which, I have a note here I've got to share very quickly. Rick Martin, who has been leading this committee opposed to this refugee resettlement program, says that Twin Falls schools have more than 224 refugee students. About 20 languages are spoken at a cost of $300,000 per year of local and state taxes on refugee students in Twin Falls. Now, the average student expense is what, $6,000 or $8,000 a year in Idaho, among the lowest in the country to actually educate a child. And yet, next to Utah, we have the second highest test scores in the country. $300,000 per year. All right, let's just pick a number, 7,000. Let's say that's the average to educate your child in Idaho. 300,000 versus 7,000. Who's paying for all of that? And then he goes on to say, how come we don't offer them temporary status? Why is it permanent status? After all, the Russians are going to clean up, if you haven't been following this story, the Russians are going to go in and they're going to absolutely rout ISIS, which means it'll be safe to live in Syria again. People could go home, couldn't they? Why is it necessary? Well, as the Wall Street Journal likes to editorialize, think of the cheap labor. All of you people out there who are living in hovels here in Twin Falls and Filer and some of our neighboring communities, just keep in mind that these people will be here forever, competing for the jobs that are basically allowing you to, just hold on by your fingernails. God willing, if the creek don't rise, I get to do this all over again tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock news coming up in just a moment.